All right, it's hard to have a conference without AI, right? So wearing another hat here, I'm an associate professor of MIS at the University of Delaware. We have touched the debate on the AI here and there today, but let me start real quick. Since ChatGPT, we have been talking about AI like nonstop. But as conversation continues, one thing becomes clearer and clearer, that is AI is like multiplier or amplifier. It's not about automating work. It moves work together with human. So awesome. All right. Yeah. So this shift is really important, particularly for the finance industry. In addition to like efficiency, we're talking about the decision making, trust, security, and also how these going to affect the financial lives and well-beings. As a researcher in this area, and I think this discussion is very important, not just from the research perspective, but also from the education perspective. How the insights today is going to be help us to educate the next generation of talents who is going to lead the AI-enabled financial systems. So as a researcher, there are so many things going on for like AI every single day. I do have the anxiety, but today we're very fortunate to have 4 wonderful, amazing, knowledgeable panelists. So we're going to ask them to introduce themselves. But I'm picking up today's trend. Please tell us who you are and what's your role in your institution, but also how the AI financial Copilot looks like in 2030, in 5 years. All right.
So I think I got stuck with going first here somehow after that. All right. There we go. So hi, everybody. I'm Austin Campbell. I run my own advisory firm where I face actually a significant number of large-scale financial institutions doing novel products. I teach at NYU, and I'm an advisor to Inca Digital, who I think Pam presented about earlier as one of the interesting AI use cases. How is AI impacting everything? Can we all just like scream loudly and throw things for about 30 seconds here? Joking aside, though, all new technologies go through some real like gear grinding upon adoption by industries. This is normal, by the way. The same thing has happened with many forms of technology, and AI in many ways is no different. So we're seeing a lot of friction, a lot of confusion, a lot of people needing to get educated, a lot of people breaking things, and a lot of people creating a huge amount of value, and that's normal. I'm seeing this across all of my firms, and you get incredibly in-depth, specific, very insightful questions, all the way to, if I install this, will it kill me? So this is where we are in the cycle, and that's very normal at this point in time. The big impacts for me right now, if we're talking about how it's changing the world, though, where LLMs are particularly useful right now is unstructured data, interpretation of unstructured data by human beings, correlation across disparate data sets and signals, and just getting what I'm going to call like first cut understandings of what's going on. Like the LLM problem is they don't have an internal concept of right or wrong. The trade-off, though, is they have an incredibly strong computational and call it connectivity capacity in the world. And I think if you understand that space, it explains a lot of how people are using it right now.
Well, I'm Satya Hernandez, I'm the Chief Data Officer at Atlanticus Holding. I say, where do I see ourselves with AI in 5 years? I would say you open up your phone, just like you check the weather. You get a full download of everything the AI has done for you overnight to ensure your financial position, your future, and the future of your children. So I think there's a lot happening now. We've seen the rapid progress of this system continue to push out. We're kind of at a breaking point right now where it is helping us understand what we're doing. But the next step is, are we going to allow it to do the steps for us? And so there's a lot of trust that needs to occur during that process. And I'd love to discuss a little bit more about that today.
I'll just be loud. If we're not being recorded.
It's recorded.
Oh, it's okay. Sounds good. Well, with that in mind, I have to also then be more cautious of my comments. Because I'm gonna throw a couple industries under the bus right now. So my name is Kelvin Chen. I'm with the Consumer Bankers Association. We're often confused with community banks. We're not. We are CBA, not ICBA. We are banks of $10 billion up to the very largest banks, and we focus on where banking hits consumers, right? So retail banking. And so that'll be the thrust of my comments. My background was, I was at the FTC, but also the CFPB, where I led a lot of their innovation work, particularly as it relates to crypto. I was at the board where I got to work with Dr. Jagtiani, where I stood up the board's innovation policy office. And so that's kind of, but that'll also shape a lot of my remarks here. So to Dr. Wang's request as to where we would experience AI 5 years from now, I would give you three alternate, multiverses are really in. Right? I guess multiverses are kind of passe, but I will give you three different multiverses, all with, I think, kind of a fairly even expected value of where we land. And part of what the challenge for us today in this Marvel movie is that we have to then help define what future we're going to be in, right? And so one multiverse would be in which we have a tool that we don't really talk about. Like, who talks about the internet these days, or who talks about computers? But we have an assistant that helps end information asymmetries. Right? That's a really big deal. However it shows up, whether it's buying a laptop or whether it's buying a financial product or thinking about life, like you would have now, not only we're used to having the world's information, but you have it in an actionable manner to make decisions about your health, your financial life, how you live your day-to-day with ease without thinking about it. That I think is like the best case scenario. The middle case scenario, and I say this with respect to the credit reporting agencies, but if you've ever used one of the credit reporting agency's apps, they are kludgy. They are difficult to find the free stuff because, I'm sorry, because these I think are associate members of CBA, it's hard sometimes to find the free stuff. And if you try to find your free credit report, like you might find offers for other credit reports that look like your free credit report that cost along the way. And it's like really tricky experience where you're getting a lot of stuff that is lead gen sold to you, right? So you're going to see these offers that are shown to you that you might not know, but they're going to look kind of splashy. And it's like, okay, is this what's best for me? Or is this what's best for you? What's best for me, right? Are you showing me this because you're getting paid for it? Or are you showing me this because I'm getting the best deal? So that's the middle case. And I'd say maybe the worst case is the third scenario that looks like the first, but is actually the second, right? And so I would note, and there is a whole genre of companies, I'm not going to talk about, I guess, because we're on the record, but I'll talk offline about who they are. But consumers turn to them for finding financial tools and financial advice. They have the veneer of being pro-consumer, thoughtful, Planet Money style wonks, but everything they're showing you, they're getting paid to show you, right? And they prioritize that in terms of what product you are best for them in terms of the lead gen, like you're the product, not them, but you don't realize that. And so that I would posit would be sort of the three different multiverses that we're facing down now. And I think, as a former regulator and as an industry person, we very rarely ask for more regs. I think the regs are a really important way of making sure we have a better chance of landing in universe A. Thank you.
This is all great. So, sorry, can you hear me? Okay. This is a great start. I just want to say thank you to Jalapa. Probably sick and tired of hearing your name by now today, but and the other organizers here from the University of Delaware for inviting me. My name is Sung Lee. I'm a trained economist, but currently I oversee what's called the Financial Stability Cyber and AI Sentinel Lab. So it's in the Division of Financial Stability. I really enjoy my work because it is centered on innovation and experimentation. But what we look at is try to think about the implications of general technology kind of advancements and how that provides both opportunities and also risks to the financial system and the economy. I'm actually more familiar with large language model tokens than digital tokens. Just a shout out, because I know this is broadcast, to my team. I work with economists, computer scientists, data scientists, etc. cybersecurity specialist, and it's been a whirlwind the past couple of years. Before I answer your question, I think it's perfect time because I like to be provocative from the nature of where I work, in the lab, I mean, but I do have to mention the disclaimer. Yes, all views are mine and not necessarily anyone else's at the Board of Governors at the Federal Reserve System. So, gotta be really quick here. There's a lot to cover in this panel, but I think by 2030, we will all be using self-improving AI copilots, agents, etc. Not only that, but we'll have been really accustomed to that by then.
All right, thank you. So now with different pictures in 5 years, let's come back to the ground. What AI financial Copilot looks like today. I'm gonna start with Santonio. Let's say like when I walk into Atlantis today, and what are the 1 or 2 use cases that you can describe?
So ones that I can discuss are, we're seeing it happen now. We're looking for ways that we can create productivity gains. And those are simply as when you're talking to an agent of ours over the phone, we are using AI to transcribe that call, understand the outcome of that call, give us a sentiment on that call, and also inform the agent of next best action. After the call, it is all summarized by an agent and pushed back out to the record for that customer. This also allows us to look at the quality of the calls holistically throughout the company instead of waiting to do maybe samples of 1 or 2. We're seeing it in addition in ways of understanding how we communicate to our customers. So what is the most direct path? But there are some forewinds or some winds of change that we're seeing here. A lot has been spoken today about regulations. One of the things that we continue to see is how can we communicate to our customers in a way that makes sense to them? I call it tone, and in a way that they could understand it and then make better decisions from it. We continue to see more and more adoption of AI, not just by us, but by our customers and how they communicate to us. So even the letters that we receive from our customers or emails or contacts, they're all kind of ChatGPT scripted. We can tell that from, double dash or the M dash. So there is a lot more coming, and we're excited about the opportunity of being able to deploy. But regulatory-wise, we're all kind of waiting to see what decisions are made so that we are given the speed limit of what we're able to do and what we're not able to do.
Great, thank you. Awesome.
Yeah, so I think one of the things to understand is who do you think your customer is for AI is a very good driver of where it's being deployed. I kind of have the unique and personal brain damage of having worked at 2 of the big 4 banks. And let me tell you, those are some complicated and gnarly institutions. One of the most important AI implementations I've actually seen is people thinking of their own employees as the customer. And what I mean by that is if you're a big 4 bank, you take all the documents you've got across every group, across every division, across every single working phase, dump those in a data lake and let people query them to see what's going on, you learn an insane amount about yourself, right? And that surprises people, but that's actually a very good consumer use case. Back to things like rules and regs and risk, you now have analysts who can go query the data lake and be like, are we allowed to do this? How does it work? What happens here? And learn all kinds of things as opposed to learning by, breaking stuff, which is how we used to do it on the trading desk. Internal data use cases for understanding are significantly more powerful than people think. I think in the same way as if you're seeing customers writing it, there are employees internally learning about things as well. So all of these are going to be emergent uses, right? Like you'll notice I deliberately dodged the prediction question because to quote a great American philosopher, predictions are hard to make, especially about the future. But many people are going to discover this as they go.
It's great to learn some of the use cases from the internal usage and also for customer benefits. So Calvin, I'm going to ask you, so right now there are many things going on, from what are the other benefits, the real value created by AI financial Copilot, right? It's not just hype. What are the fundamental value that firms are creating right now?
Yeah, and I'm sorry to be on my phone earlier, just about to talking about the present day of model risk management, I have to call out Shannon in this front row, who's a model risk management expert, tipped me off that like just now, like 30 seconds ago, the prudential regulators released new guidance on model risk management. And this is a once in a generation thing, just so you know, because like the last one, I always confuse like when they say SR 11.7, if it's, I think 11 is the year, so it's the seventh comment letter that went out. So the last time that they spoke on this was 14 years ago, right? And imagine where we were 14 years ago, like the iPhone was 3 years old and no one was talking about AI. And that's been the guidance that we've been having to bootstrap around on AI, right? So like if I could dance, I'd be up here doing on camera, so we'll dance. But like this is a really big deal, and it's happening right, like literally right now. So that's cool. In terms of how people are used to, thank you, Shannon, and shout out. But as for your question as to how people are actually using AI, again, my background and my focus will be banking. I was lucky enough, I was actually, the Financial Stability Oversight Council had a roundtable 2 weeks ago where they pulled together folks like us, they pulled it like Meta, NVIDIA, A16Z, a bunch of other folks, and they asked that very question. And so the conversation was Chatham House. I can't say who said what, but I can summarize it. And so basically, in terms of like who's doing what in the banking side, it's kind of boring. And so it's primarily like back office stuff because that's the safest. Like, you know, whenever anyone asks for advice on what you should do AI on, I'm like, don't do the hard stuff. Do the easy stuff, risky list stuff first, or not risky list, but the less risky stuff first, so that you can get like your culture around on it, you can get your supervisors around on it, you get people comfortable with it. And then as you build that expertise and have a language about it, you can then start doing the more dangerous or more risky stuff. And so it's primarily in where you had jobs before, where like if I was generating paper for Dr. Jung to then read paper, now we have like an AI agent generating paper for his agent to then digest the paper, which doesn't really seem to be super efficient, but that's what we're seeing a lot of the usage. There was a conversation though about where where it's not just efficiency gain though, where we can hopefully see some actual gains and like transformative gains. And some of the smarter people in the room that are smarter than me noted that microtransactions can now be real in all kinds of ways we hadn't expected before. And so that is like super interesting and like a super neat way to kind of see that stuff play out. I mean, the thing I would note with microtransactions is that they will almost necessarily play out on rails, either like the current rails need to adapt, or they will play out on rails that are different rails, because the payment rails generally have got they've got a minimum fixed cost transaction fee that come across that. And I'll note, and we'll hopefully talk about this later on, when we talk about the risks to consumers for payments from the things like agents and the like, generally for a lot of the stuff when you like come up and just have these round tables and think about the risks, the payment rails and the payment regs generally are there to protect you and do a good job of it, even with agentic. However, once you slip outside of the conventional payment rails, it's not clear that Reg E and Reg Z apply to the crypto rails, and the network rules certainly don't. And so you could have consumers slipping into another whole set of liabilities that they're totally unaware of, kind of like how when people started doing push payments, they didn't realize that they weren't protected, right? And so we have these scams because we train consumers for 50 years to be negligent. And we always said you're going to be fine if you're negligent. And then all of a sudden we give them a technology where if they're negligent, they get hurt. We're going to see that again with payments if we don't fix it. So we're back to kind of the multiverse question of like, what can we do now to help prevent us from that bad future and get back into the good future?
It's one thing that I brought up to some of the people sitting at the table. People are already asking ChatGPT, hey, help me with the finances. Yeah, I do that too. And the funny thing is they ask about healthcare, they ask about a bunch of other things as well. We just saw this earlier this week. Perplexity went ahead and purchased a company to ensure that they can be the front loader on how financial advice should be given. I think the part that's interesting for us is how can the customer really understand? And I think that's what you're getting back to. What is good for them versus what's good for the company that's good for them. And it's really going to be a tough thing. And that's where we're hoping regulations can come in and really bridge that gap so that there's transparency to the customer of what that decision is.
I don't want to make about that. Yeah, how do you let consumers know what's going on under the hood? And this is not a CBA position, sorry. But this is something I've really struggled with because the models are so complex and so evolving that no disclosure regime is really going to work, right? And this is just me personally. I trust, well, actually, as an example, I trust Waymo. I'm less comfortable in other self-driving cars. And part of this, I know, is that Waymo always drives the speed limit, whereas other self-driving cars will exceed the speed limit if other people exceed the speed limit, and you can then override it to like really exceed the speed limit. And I don't like that, right? But that's a terrible reason to choose. Like, there's so many other reasons that go into the model of Waymo versus these other self-driving cars. And part of that's probably influenced by the fact that the first time I took a Waymo, it had a pretty cat on the outside. It was a Jaguar, and they had like, it smelled good, and they had like spa-style music inside, right? And so it just made me feel safe. And so, like, as we enter this new world, when we're trying to get consumers understanding like all of the different choices that the model's making for self-driving, financial regulation, or financial health, like, you can't just give them a scorecard. And so how do you give them the feels of like the fun cat and the spa sounds in an accurate way?
I think this is going to be actually one of the areas where the rubber meets the road on AI usage in finance in general. Is you've got a couple of forces that we have been studiously ignoring, sort of coming full force with a collision that is now probably unavoidable that we're going to need to grapple with. So number one, with these models, they're not replicable. Like, I can give the exact same model, the exact same prompt at 2 different times and get 2 different answers. And that produces a lot of challenges from a financial regulation and consumer regulation standpoint, right? And number 2, the models are, okay, so I'm a parent. My mental model of LLMs is teenagers. And what I mean by that is they're often quite bright, but they're also unpredictable, prone to breaking rules, and you need to watch them constantly. I found this is a pretty good way to think about LLMs and teenagers. And so you have a thing that will confidently take input from a consumer and give them an answer. And do we know they gave it good input? Do we know it understands? It'll come back to you. Don't worry, it'll come back. But all of this then pairs with the other big problem that we have with people in finance, which is most of you think that you make your financial decisions rationally, and I'm here to tell you that you're lying to yourselves. Most of you are making them based on emotion. One, you learn this the hard way as a trader because you watch yourself do stupid stuff because of your emotions repeatedly and have to train yourself as best you can out of it to whatever extent that's possible. And 2, it's even worse when you're managing other people's money and you watch the decisions they make. So I have a good friend who once pitched to me an idea of an RIA, investment advisor, where what they do is they take your money in and do the normal intake and like all your financial goals, et cetera. And then inevitably when the market goes down, everybody calls it panics. So he was going to keep a bunch of psychologists and therapists on staff for when people started calling him during market downturns. And I'm like, this will be the best performing RIA in the world. So now we have LLMs who are teenagers talking to people who are highly emotional. I just think that's going to be incredibly, challenging from a regulatory perspective in the long run in nonlinear ways.
Sorry, Dr. Winston. So this was another theme that actually came out of the FSOC conversation, which I thought was changed. And I'm kind of arrogant, like I usually don't think I go in and get my mind changed about stuff, and I learned so much in this discussion. And part of that is, as Austin points out, right, because they're probabilistic, you put the same model on a different piece of hardware, it's going to get a different answer. And so up until now, and this is why I'm so excited to open up this model risk management guidance as soon as you get off stage, is that up until now, the idea behind it is you got to look in the model, figure out what the model's going to say, and just run the model. And then it's like trendy to say human in the middle, right? So you put a human in the middle. The problem with that, right, is that you can't figure out what it's going to say by opening up the hood. And so, but the good news is the model risk management isn't just ex ante, Latin for before, looking what's in, but there's a sense of also ongoing monitoring, right? And then audit. And so to use Austin's example as your teenager, my 13-year-old, if I'm going to sit him down and be like, tell me what you're going to do at the party tonight, right? Like, good luck, right? So he might have like a model, and he might stick to it or not. But if I were to ongoing monitor him, that's a different thing. And when he screws up, if I'm then to then sit down and have a conversation with him about why he screwed up and like, let's limit the damage. And so the question is, regulators may need to move to those latter forms in helping, most importantly, regulated institutions get comfortable doing that. Because right now, because of third-party risk management, another set of guidance that needs to be revisited, we're stuck trying to help kind of guess at what the regulators expect. And so we keep trying to peer under the hood. And the problem with that is, even if you put a man in the middle, if you give me something as non-probabilistic as a chess game, right? And you put me in the middle of it, and I can't then sit there and be like, chess, game. Why did you move the knight to here, right? That's just going to slow everything down, and it's not going to actually fix anything, right? And so we're going to have this new probabilistic and a little bit more risky, not risky, but different kind of risk approach to how we think about MRM moving forward.
This is great. Self-disclosure, I started to use ChatGPT for tax return this year. It's my first ever time doing tax return by myself.
We don't necessarily recommend that.
So yeah, we already touched on what could go wrong in many different ways. But I'm gonna move to Song, from your perspective, system level. What could be the things go wrong?
Yes. So first, I do have to disclose something. I have nothing to do with the new guidance, but that's great. That's one thing, and I love the teenager analogy. So at the kind of macro financial level, I guess first thing, always want a balanced view, even personal. So really want to emphasize that AI, incredible kind of opportunities as well, right? When it comes to financial stability, for the financial sector, whether it's, price discovery, market efficiency, risk management, like if you're able to assess risk more accurately, forecast things more accurately, just incredible opportunities. So just want to start off by that. But going back to the risk dimension, I kind of try to remember things because information overflow these days, very overwhelming. Four C's. So the first C is concentration. As you can imagine, if some financial institution really cracks the code in terms of integrating AI and being really profitable, et cetera, that has some market structure implications. But also from the AI lab's perspective, if, for example, in one AI lab, cracks the code in terms of really going out there in terms of large language model performance or agentic AI performance, that could also have supply chain issues and the systemic risk implications as well. But that said, if you look at kind of how things are evolving, a lot of competition still being had. There's open source models, a few AI labs, South Korean models now seem to be doing well too. So, there's that. The second C is correlation slash herding, where you have kind of common reactions to market signals. In that sense, obviously, that is both in academia and when you talk with people, whether it's other agencies, private sector, or other central banks, that comes up. But as we mentioned earlier, there's so many different levers that you could pull and push. You could adjust the temperature. Agentic AI frameworks are very complicated, and just one little difference leads to a lot of different results. I personally have a paper that compares kind of a human experiment in terms of financial transactions. And we find that large language models are very kind of herding averse, for example. They really focus on their task. They really value the private signals. And so they're not moved by kind of what others do. And that's kind of a working paper out there. So in some sense, it could be, we should be open to kind of the fact that maybe machines are not as susceptible as humans to animal spirits, as you mentioned. So, possibility, we'll continue to experiment and research. The third C is concentration, correlation, collusion slash market manipulation. That's why I have to remember the C's because I forget. But here, there's some theoretical papers that kind of mention how AIs can collude with one another, how market manipulation could be easier. But just kind of taking a step back, probably some of you know of all these stories where if once AI knows that it's interacting with an AI, it starts talking in machine language because it's so much more efficient to do so. Like humans have no idea what they're talking about, etc. So, obviously anything could happen, but there's also a lot of kind of incentives for a third kind of AI or a person to not go with the collusion to make profits, et cetera. So there is that incentive too. So again, there's something to keep in mind, but also good to know that there's some other forces at hand too. The fourth and maybe the most imminent as we speak here is cyber and operational risk, because again, our lab also works a lot on cyber issues, and if you really look at the evolution of zero-day vulnerabilities and how fast they become exploited over the past year, over the past 5 years, it's just been incredible, kind of how fast cyber professionals are able to kind of exploit zero-day vulnerabilities. It used to be, I believe, 10 months from a time of kind of announced zero-day to exploitation, the average, and now it's basically down to 20 hours, and they expect to be down to 1 hour by the end of this year. So it suggests that there's a lot of AI being used in cyber. So just something to kind of keep in mind. But again, early stages, and I guess one thing to add is the labor component, because there's a lot of headlines there, still early stages there, but that also has financial stability implications.
Thanks for the system level sharing. I think I overheard this morning someone says somebody was paid to be skeptical. I think that's like a system level. So Austin, do you have anything to add for the risks from your builder's perspective? What are the risks are underweighted now?
Yeah, so I'll try to fit into the C's framework and add some more C's to this so we can just keep rolling with it, because I like that. That's good. So one is confidence. I think I have a unique seat in this, in that I traded an incredibly private, incredibly gnarly product called bank-owned life insurance. Like, raise your hand if you've ever traded a bank-owned life insurance wrap. Bank-owned life insurance wrap. You know how I knew no hands were going up? There's like 5 of us. And I'm like, I don't see like Cy or Costa or Paul in the audience. So LLMs know nothing about this stuff, because anybody who was good at it didn't write it down. So I will occasionally just ask like Claude or ChatGPT, hey, what would you do in this situation? And they confidently tell me to break the law every single time. Okay, I would have gone to jail 3 times over listening to these things, because they're like unaware of very niche like tax treatment or like certain kinds of arbitrage trades that would go against you. Like, it's really bad. And the LLM itself doesn't know. Again, back to teenagers. They don't know when they're wrong. They think they know everything. And so confidence is a real problem here. You get, it's not just hallucinations, but a thing that it never had a chance to be right about in the first place because of the training data. The other one is controls. And I think this relates to cyber. Like, LLMs are incredible. They'll do some wild stuff. But they will also do some wild stuff, meaning you could very directly give it a task and then come back and it did something completely different than what you told it to do. And so one of the things that I think a lot of people are going to need to start integrating is controls external to the LLMs. Like, agentic commerce is a great example here. Don't give the LLM the credit card, right? Like, give it the ability to send a payment instruction to an external system that will veto all sorts of stuff, right? Like, don't give the LLM the credit card. And I think the controls framework around LLMs, especially with the non-replicability as well, like, you'll find something efficiently paid your Spotify bill 11 months in a row, and then on month 12, something happens. And it's the same prompt every time.
I never thought I'd spend so much time agreeing with like the crypto guy. There's the super founder at the end of the tape, but one of the things that when we were at the board years and years ago, we were trying to figure out what the regulatory framework would be. And so one of the reasons why I'm so excited about the new MRM is that we worked on the first speech saying, oh, we think MRM is the guidance here. But we, at the same time that we released that, Vice Chairman Quarles did a speech that we also made a point of saying that sometimes it's not about looking in when you're thinking about model risk management, but it's about creating circuit breakers, right? So when you think about the way the SEC does high-speed frequency trading, It could have said, show us all your models, put a human in the middle, ask why they move the knight to here and the bishop to here, and that would be slow speed trading, right? And so instead, what the SEC did is they said, let's put circuit breakers around it. So UBU within certain controls, but then once you get plus or minus X%, and we'll figure out how to set that tolerance, then teenager, come upstairs, you're a little bit too hot, let's have a conversation about what's going on, let's take a look back about why you made the decisions that you did, right? And like that is a form of risk management too. You don't have to have pure insight into everything, but we do need our regulators to be able to say that to our people, which is why I'm super excited to see what the new guidance says.
Okay, yeah, great. There are so many C's, it's a great framework. Where are you a B? So next time I'm gonna ask you to have some words, framework start with B. Thank you. So I do wanna have some time to talk about agentic AI. We discussed some like the risks of current like LLM and also like AI, but now like agentic AI is also developing really fast. And when we hear about agentic AI, that means like automation, right? So like the robot can use my credit card to buy the breakfast for me or coffee. So what is happening right now, and whether the type of risk we just described, do they still the same risk, or there are some like new risks?
So, I'll take this from the business perspective, and I get this asked all the time. Why can't I install a cloud cowork on my computer? Why won't you let me do that? And I go, you had a prompt you sent me last week that you didn't understand why the color yellow wasn't the color yellow. And we're still working through that. Most people don't understand how to prompt correctly. And when you give agentic a tool to use, hey, the head of security for Google had a problem with OpenClaw where it deleted almost all her files because she didn't know how to control it. And so when you start giving it access to things like your computer, your financial information, everything that's stored in there, maybe things about your children, and now it has open ability to do whatever it is that you want it to do without really understanding how to set up your own guardrails and how to set up, these are the files you can play with and you're not allowed to play with. It may answer a question for me of, hey, I want to share files with my buddy over here, Kelvin, and it goes, oh yeah, but your security system installed from your InfoSec group doesn't allow USB transfers. Let me just fix that real quick. And it just supersedes that idea. And now I can plug in my USB and hand over to Kelvin the entirety of some sort of very M&A activity that I'm not supposed to share. So there's a lot of training that has to happen at the individual level that I don't think we have a really good method to explain. I always find myself have two groups of people I'm dealing with one that says, oh, ChatGPT helps me write an email, that's great. And another one that says, I want it to do my job for me. And so it's really kind of an interesting view on those breakers and understanding how we're going to be able to educate the population on what true agentic means and what happens when the agentics go bad. What Kelvin was talking about, circuit breakers, are become so interesting, but I go beyond the regulators. I go to what are the circuit breakers that are going to occur at the individual level to make sure that I don't hurt myself.
And if I could reframe your question a little bit, because the thing I know about agentic is that it's not necessarily automation, right? So I'm like a failed electrical, I am not like, I am a failed electrical engineer. I have a systems engineering degree, which is a degree for engineers that don't want to be engineers anymore. And the class that had me like out of that was the Motorola 6800, like where you're programming bugs. And those were Boolean if-then gates, right? So we've been able to do automation since Boolean gates, before I was a kid. Right? And similarly, I had someone say, why agentic? We don't need faster payments. It's not faster payments either. It's payments with context and decision-making, right? So it's something that's going to make a decision on my behalf based off of information that it pulls together itself. And so then the questions and the risks then flow from that, right? As to when it's making those decisions, what is it optimizing when it makes those decisions? I'm a bank person, so when I think about bank regulations and risks, I think about them in sort of a stack of regulations that we are used to in the bank side. And so there are a variety of different risks you can think about. There's Bank Secrecy Act risk, right? So like, am I paying a criminal or a fraudster? And so we talk about how in this new era, like you don't just need to know your customer, but you need to know your agent. There's consumer protection risks, right? Is it treating me unfairly? Do I know what's going on? Is some of the information the senators talked about. There's safety and soundness risk, right? So like could a bunch of agents like optimize to make a run of the bank because that's actually like healthy behavior for you. Or then you run into financial stability risks when you then run into questions like concentration risk and the like. And so I tend to think of it as just kind of moving up and down that stack of risks and then think about the solutions and whether or not they work or not. I realize we're kind of at time. So plenty of risks for the coffee hour.
Thanks for bringing back our conversation within the AI financial Copilot. Son, do you have anything to add?
Just that, I'm gonna two examples: cyber and then research. For cyber, end-to-end kind of agentic AI frameworks are already kind of in motion in the sense that it scans something, identifies a bug, verifies that it's real, and then develops a patch for it, like end to end. Similar to kind of the cyber example, I also do research, and there are many researchers now that kind of are experimenting with end-to-end research. So give it a basic prompt with some guidelines, and you wait a few hours, and at the end of the few hours, you have a fully kind of written paper. So I've also experimented with that, and what ended up happening is I had to recruit a lot of co-authors to go line by line and verify each line, just because I wasn't comfortable without that kind of process. So really, I think at the end of the day, the verification validation, that part, I think will be very important in the age of agent AI.
Thank you. All right. Yeah, we can keep the conversation forever, but because of time, each panelist, please give one or two sentences. What the key takeaway for the AI financial Copilot for our audience?
All right, I'll start again. That works. I didn't know what order we wanted to do it in. All right, number one, remember your AI as a teenager. It is a very good mental model for understanding them. And then number two, what I would say is I'm very skeptical about the world of AI doing things by themselves. I'm incredibly optimistic on the world of AI being a force multiplier for all sorts of people. And I think it's important to understand the nature of a transformative technology when you look at these things.
I would say just keep in mind it's not a replacement, it's an additive. And what we need to think about is the context we're giving it. We need to educate it in a way that it understands what we want, for Kelvin's point, and it operates in the form that we want it to operate in.
2 points. One is that good technology needs good regulations to get people comfortable using it. Right. So when I was a kid, Visa and MasterCard used to advertise a zero liability guarantee because they wanted to get you comfortable swiping. They don't advertise it anymore because we as a society have internalized that. We know we're always protected wherever we are. What's the equivalent for that on the AI side? 2, regulators right now are a little distracted. And so it's not clear that the regulators are going to be able to pull together the kind of cohesive frameworks around this the way they did 50 years ago with the Electronic Funds Transfer Act or Regulation Z. And so we're going to have to do it, right? And so we're going to have to work together across silos and across industries, academics and non-academics, to help set down these rules and then identify the very hardest things that need to be left over to the policymakers.
For me, who kind of oversees the lab, just incredible opportunities and potentially profound risks. Get your hands dirty, experiment, have fun. You'll learn a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let's have applause for this. Thank you. Thank you. And also, we conclude today's event. We have Julapa, one of the have some closing remarks.
All right, so we'd like to thank everybody for staying until the end. We really appreciate your feedback, your engagement. Gang and I are excited to host you here today at the FinTech Hub. So we have a reception outside, so feel free. We have an open bar. We have some snacks, so feel free to stay and continue the conversation outside. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Again, thank you, everyone, traveling from different places. Thanks so much. See you next year.